Hello, my name is Sean Ulmer, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. And I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon for another in our series, Grant Wood in Focus, which is a series of Zoom presentations that look at varying aspects of Grant Wood's life and career. These presentations are recorded, and then they are added to the museum's YouTube channel. So if you are enjoying it from our YouTube channel, be sure to look around at other offerings that we have on our YouTube channel regarding Grant Wood. We have quite a few, actually. So if you are someone who's interested in Grant Wood and his life and career, we have quite a bit on the YouTube channel for you to enjoy. Today, we're going to be looking at a very specific aspect of Grant Wood's career, and that is his depictions of denim. And this topic is an interesting way to kind of look at Grant Wood and the work that he produced. Denim is a fabric that's long been associated with him, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. It's this particular presentation on denim actually coincides with an exhibition, a temporary exhibition that we have up right now called Overalls, Grant Wood's Depictions of Denim. And many of the images that I'm going to share with you today, not all of them, but many of them, are in that exhibition. So if you enjoy or are intrigued by what you hear here today, make a trip to the museum and see this exhibition up through the summer of 2023. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get my PowerPoint up so that you can all see it. Okay. There we go. All right, that should be full screen for everyone. So, of course, I had to use a denim background for this title slide because it just wouldn't be appropriate any other way. So, again, Grant Wood and denim is going to be our focus today. And I want to start with this particular image, which is a self-portrait that Grant Wood did in 1932. It's a drawing. It is one of the works that is on view right now. It's not out all the time because it is work on paper, and we don't have works on paper out all the time for their preservation. But it is something that he did in 1932, looking fairly serious, directly out at the viewer, but you can see the straps from his bib overalls on kind of going over his shoulder here. I will talk a little bit more about this later, but I wanted to kind of start with this image because it is sort of, here he is depicting himself, and he's depicting himself in denim, in bib overalls, and it is a type of garment that's long been associated with Grant Wood. But before we go too far along, I wanted to kind of take just a moment and go over a tiny history of denim. By the time Grant Wood is representing denim in his work, denim is a ubiquitous cloth. It is used throughout American society. So I thought it might be interesting to just take a little sort of sideway journey here and talk a little bit about the history of denim. Denim, from what we understand, the idea of jeans or denim really originates in 1567 in the Italian coastal city of Genoa. And it was most associated with sailors, and so that's what we're looking at here is a print of sailors wearing this kind of denim cloth. It's a twill pant. It was colored blue. It was dyed blue. It was used frequently in amongst the sailors. And of course, Genoa being a coastal town, that was a major industry for them was seafaring, and so this fabric originates there, and it was called jeans, named for Genoa. Genoa was a French-speaking town as well as Italian, and so it was de jeans, and it was actually called bleu de Gênes, the blue of Genoa. And so that's where we get blue jeans from. Basically, that word blue jeans comes from bleu de Gênes. And so a little bit later, in France at the beginning of the 17th century, in the town of Nîmes, there is a wool and silk twill fabric that's produced that's closer to today's denim. And it was produced in Nîmes, as I said, beginning in the 17th century. And it was a fabric from Nîmes, so therefore it was denim of Nîmes. And of course, in anglicized version, that's denim. Denim becomes denim. And so the word denim comes from the fabric, very similar to the fabric that was made in Genoa, the jeans of Genoa. Denim comes from Nîmes. Now, it is popularized in the United States by this man, Jacob Davis, as a tailor, originally from Reno, Nevada, and he was creating outfits, pants, overalls, out of denim, out of this denim fabric. But he was receiving complaints from people that they would just, even though it was a hardy fabric, it kept tearing. And so he came up with the idea of adding rivets to the pockets and to the base of the zipper to reinforce the denim. It was a huge hit, and demand skyrocketed. But Jacob Davis was not able to ramp up his production. So he reached out to the man who was providing him with raw materials, the denim raw materials, this guy, Levi Strauss. Who was in San Francisco, and so in 1873, the two of them form a partnership, and apply for a patent for reinforced denim, and so they begin to sell this like crazy. It was perfect for the gold rush, for the miners, for anybody who was sort of working in a lot of the fields. They needed a strong, sturdy, reinforced fabric to make their work clothes out of. And so he sold them out of his San Francisco store, the Levi Strauss and Company, and it really his name becomes synonymous. We don't talk that much about poor Jacob Davis these days, but Levi Strauss really had his name all over these items, even though they were in partnership. And here from a very early ad. This is an ad from the late 1800s. They're able to possess this patent until the 1890s, and then it becomes open, and that's when we see other fabricators come in, like Lee and Wrangler, come in and start making their own version. But they had a patent from the 1870s through the 1890s, and they did a great job marketing them. Here, riveted clothing. As you see, this is an ad from, as I said, from the late 1800s, and it was used for farming. It was used for mining. It was used for timbering. It was used for any sort of rugged activity. And here, a photograph of boys wearing denim in Gee's Bend, Alabama. A photograph from the Library of Congress. Or here, a Dorothea Lange photograph, also in the possession of the Library of Congress, a sharecropper's son in denim overalls, working tobacco in Wake County, North Carolina. And then denim was popularized beyond actual workforce. So with America's fascination with the cowboy, cowboy movies arose. And so cowboy movie stars were always pictured wearing denim. And denim was worn by cowboys. And in fact, it was cowboys that were the ones who got the rivet at the base of the zipper removed. Because riding horseback with that rivet at the base of the zipper was very uncomfortable, and it would heat up. Plus, it was just uncomfortable. So the rivets at the base of the zipper disappear thanks to the cowboy. But then, very few people in the United States knew cowboys firsthand. They knew cowboys through film. And so here, John Wayne, who originally, hails from Iowa, is seen wearing denim as a cowboy in one of his roles. Here I mentioned that it was used in the logging industry for timbering. Here's a group of individuals, a self-help sawmill corporation in Idaho from the early 20th century. Here, miners from the 1930s. You can see, so denim is really a ubiquitous cloth. It's used by all people, all walks of life, really. Here, women welders wearing denim during World War II, during around 1943. This is the Todd Erie Basin Dry Dock. They're welding for the war effort, particularly like how they tie these up at the bottom so they don't get caught up in any of the work that they're doing. And here from the 1950s, Levi's advertisement. Here, these very kind of clean cut young men all wearing Levi's with this very big cuff at the bottom. But the 50s were very, very interesting because there was this really kind of wholesome side that you see in an image like this. And then there was this bad boy side. This Marlon Brando in The Wild One from 1953, motorcycle figure here wearing denim and leather in this movie. So this was sort of dichotomy in denim during the 1950s, further perpetuated by James Dean, as you see in these two images, kind of a bad boy, and there's a certain level of sexiness, an allure that's now being sort of laid in. These are not jeans that kind of really go with loggers and miners and farmers. This is a whole different persona attached to denim, and made very popular in culture, in American culture. And as I said, there's a certain level of sexiness, as one can see here with Marilyn Monroe from 1952, from extraordinarily early in her career, one of her very first films. You see her wearing these denims. Again, she becomes this sort of sex symbol bombshell, and she really kind of starts in films like this from very early, in which she's seeing in denim, in jeans. And then, of course, through the 60s and into the 70s, denim becomes very much part of popular culture. You see it associated with the rock industry. This is Robert Plant. This is from the early 1970s. And here also from the 70s, extraordinary bell bottoms covering these platform shoes. Again, a lot of denim used in a pair of these slacks that you see here. And then even in the late 70s, popular icons, former movie star, eventually governor of California and eventual president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, here in a complete kind of denim outfit. So really kind of transcends over into the political field. And then in the hands of people like Calvin Klein, denim becomes high fashion and high priced. This is a Calvin Klein's runway show from 1976. Denim is the star of this show. You can see it's one of Calvin Klein's earliest, actually, runway shows. Very, very simple kind of runway, but yeah, denim is the star in a shot like this. And then he takes it to new heights with this, using Brooke Shields. This is an advertisement from 1980. Brooke Shields is 15. This is all about sex, sex appeal, and really goes on to really sort of heighten denim in completely different circles as well. And then, even to the present day, this is a Christian Dior runway show. from 2017-18, the 17-18 season show, and it's in the hands of Christian Dior at this point, the Dior house, and again a runway show that really features is all in this case was very much where denim took the lead, and so that's a brief history of the history of denim, and so I wanted to just also talk a little bit about how denim figured in Grant Wood's own life. So I pulled together a series of photographs of Grant Wood from different points in his life, and he wore denim. I mean, denim was not just something that he depicted; it's actually something that he wore. It was part and parcel of his sort of everyday life. And so here, a photograph by his good friend Marvin Cohn from the 1920s of Grant Wood working en plein air out in the countryside, doing some sketching. It's hard to tell, but that is a white pair of bib overalls that you see him wearing here, or just a second. There, okay. Or here from 1932, a portrait of Grant Wood in his bib overalls next to Arbor Day in his studio. Also from 1932, Grant Wood in his bib overalls, the only one that you can see wearing bib overalls at Stone City Art Colony, which was a colony that lasted from 1932 to 1933. You see him front and center with his fancy black and white shoes on, but he wore these overalls as a smock, really, to keep paint off of him, and so you will frequently see him, and you know, after 1930 in particular, after American Gothic, after it becomes famous, you know, and people associate bib overalls with him. Here from 32, next Daughters of the Revolution, in the studio again with his black and white shoes on, which are kind of fancy dress shoes. He's got his bib overalls on, because this is really a working uniform for him. Here, a photograph from the same shoot, actually, from a different angle, again with Daughters of the Revolution. You kind of see more of him in that same bib overalls. Here from 1933, from the second year of the art colony, he is pictured with John Stuart Curry, one of the other great regionalists, along with Thomas Hart Benton. Curry was a guest at the Stone City Art Colony. Didn't stay for the whole time, but was there for a while. And here's a picture of a photograph of John Stuart Curry and Grant Wood, and a drawing that John Stuart Curry did of Grant Wood, all wearing bib overalls. And so they're all wearing, in all of these things, bib overalls, really very much a part of their daily life. And here from later, from 1939, after he's moved to Iowa City, here with Parson Weems' Fable, Grant Wood is again still wearing bib overalls, and you can see that they are covered in paint. So they are a way for him to keep all of his stuff in all those pockets, but also to protect himself. It is a working outfit. It is a smock of some sort. Now, of course, this is Grant Wood's most famous painting, period, but most famous painting to include denim. And so what we see here in American Gothic from 1930 is an image of the farmer and his daughter standing in front of the house that is in Eldon, Iowa. And he's holding a pitchfork. And it's interesting because the three tines of the pitchfork are really echoed in the lines of the bib overalls. And you can't see the straps for the overalls, are covered by the jacket, but you can see that wonderful central line of the overalls going up and branching out, just like the pitchfork, echoing the pitchfork. But it was not just this painting that Grant Wood depicted denim. Actually, there were quite a few paintings, and we're going to go back in time to one of the earliest examples, and that is this picture from 1921-22. This is Adoration of the Home. This was a commission work by Henry Ely, who was building homes sort of at the edge of Cedar Rapids, where the city met the country. And he asked Grant Wood to kind of paint this sort of billboard for him. And you can see it's 22 by 81 inches, and it had little panels on each side that had text on them that are no longer with the piece. And so he creates this homage to homes. This little billboard of sorts was for a while hung on the front porch of a model home that Ely had built in the downtown of Cedar Rapids, in an empty lot in the downtown of Cedar Rapids, so that businessmen on their lunch hour could come and tour a sample home and then put in an order for one. Now, this neighborhood is no longer on the edge of town. It's well within the city limits today. But at the time, it was where the city met the country. And that's exactly what Grant Wood has depicted here. So in the center, you have the goddess holding up the model home. And to one side, you have the city. To the right-hand side, you have the city. And to the left-hand side, you have the country. And in both sides, you see bib overalls. And you see him on the left-hand side with the farmer. And of course, Grant Wood, until the age of 10, lived on the family farm. So he's well familiar with overalls and the association of overalls with farmers. But of course, he was in the city now. He lived in the city. And so in the city, he saw overalls used by people who were in various trades, whether they were, working in a flour mill, or whether they were in construction, or working in factories. They were wearing overalls. They were wearing denim because it was a strong, reinforced fabric. And it was basically a uniform for so many professions at this time. Now, I know a lot of scholars have spent a great deal of time talking about how Grant Wood wore bib overalls in reference to his childhood as a farmer. Or on a farm, I should say. But in reality, Grant Wood was surrounded by individuals who were wearing bib overalls. Yes, he was familiar with them on the farm, but he was also familiar with them in all kinds of manufacturing. And so, and he depicts that very early in his career here in the 1920s. And as we will see many times afterwards. Now, he didn't depict this, but he actually uses actual denim from actual bib overalls that he has worn out on these cupboard doors. These are cupboard doors that were originally installed in his studio, which the museum owns and operates. He lived in the studio from 1924 to 1935 with his mother and sometimes with his sister. Sometimes there was three individuals there. And there's a small area in the studio that is basically, I'm going to move ahead here, just to the right of the fireplace, and to the left of those two seats. To the left is where the little living room was. To the right was sort of the central heating area with the fireplace, that kind of warm some tea. And you see the doors in between those two spaces. And those doors would open up to reveal a pull-out dining table. And that's where he and his mother, who were the primary residents there, he and his mother would sit and eat their dinner. This was their dining room table. And you can see it's a pass-through to the kitchen. And so this set of doors was to basically to conceal this area, to kind of keep it away. I'm going to go back here a couple so that you can see it. And he covered these doors in actual denim. And this you can see up here in the upper right, you can actually see a pocket. We have these doors on view right now in the overalls exhibition. And it has been over 20 years since these doors have been on view. We had one single panel on view in our 2005 Grant Wood exhibition, the panel to the far right with the pocket. But this is the first time all four of them have been on view in well over 20 years. And so it's a really wonderful and rare opportunity for individuals to see this artifact, basically, from the Grant Wood studio that is actually covered in Grant Wood's denim. So, and let me move forward here. So 1925, basically around the same time, Grant Wood is commissioned, a different commission than Adoration of the Home from earlier. And commissions were one of the ways in which Grant Wood was able to fund himself as a full-time artist. He received a commission from the J.G. Cherry Company here in Cedar Rapids. They were a dairy machine producing factory. So they would produce dairy equipment that would be bought by dairy farmers for dairy production. And so he was commissioned to create a series of paintings of various workers creating some of the things that the Cherry building, the Cherry Company, produced. And then these paintings were taken around to trade shows and set up. And so people coming to trade shows could see the wares that the J.G. Cherry Company created. And so we have a number of these on view in the current exhibition. And I want to share just some of them with you today. Here the coppersmith, you can see he's wearing bib overalls. Again, this is a very much ubiquitous outfit at the time. It was used in factories, it was used on the farm, it was used sort of everywhere. Here, the shop inspector, again, wearing bib overalls. And you can see, again, these in person in the exhibition. The turret lathe operator, again, wearing bib overalls. The painter, and here he's painting a large piece of equipment. It was kind of the kinds of equipment that the Cherry Company would produce and sell to dairy farmers. And here he's painting it, and I've got some really wonderful details. He still has a bit of loose brushwork at this time in the 20s. He's still working a little bit in American Impressionism before he changes his style around 1929, 30. And so this is still a little bit painterly. It couldn't be too painterly because the whole point of this series was to sell dairy equipment. And so you had to be able to communicate, this is the product that the J.G. Cherry Company is producing. And if you make a contract with them, this is the product that you'll be getting. So he couldn't be as loose and painterly as he is in other works of art from the same period. But you can see he still has this really wonderful brushwork in this series, and are still able to communicate what the product is that they are selling. From a couple years later, there's this really fun Christmas card that Grant Wood creates from 1927. It's a print, actually. It's a relief print. It's carved and then it's printed, but he leaves out the salutation. So it's all printed except for to the Turners. And he handwrites that part in. And then he hand colors it. So you can see it's a kind of a self-portrait of Grant Wood in his studio at a painting, at an easel. There's the fireplace that we saw. And just to the right there are the cupboard doors that are made out of denim. And so we actually own two of these in the collection. They are both on view in the current exhibition. I'm afraid the image on the right here is not all that great, but it gives you a sense that how he has done this so that it is actually a print, and then that next to last line, next to the last bit of it, he stopped basically at greeting, and then he personalizes it after that. The Very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year at the bottom is printed, but then there's that space where he personalizes it between. It's really cool. And you see that in each case, he is hand coloring. In the image on the left, he's hand colored the face, but he didn't do that in the image on the right. Although in both cases, the cupboard doors are colored, and the tree and the landscape is colored in both cases. So wonderful opportunity to get both of these works on paper out. Again, you see him wearing his bib overalls. This is how he is presenting himself, and how he is going to become best known. So we talked about American Gothic from 1930, which would have been sort of the next in this sequence. But I also, and that really was a major moment for him. That's when he really
splashed onto the national scene. And so he becomes a very famous artist. And it's also at the time where he's changed his style in the late 20s, in 28, 29, 30. And so here from 31, you see him working completely in this new style. It's much tighter, much firmer edges. What's gone is that loose painterly brushwork. And this is Young Corn. It is a work that's on view in our Grant Wood Gallery. It dates from 1931. He's taking this new style and applying it to landscape, whereas he'd been doing it to figurative work. And I want to zoom in on the center. And you see, this family working this farm by hand. Certainly by 1931, farm equipment is readily available, and many, if not most, farmers were using farm equipment at this time. But this was a painting that Grant Wood was creating in the depths of the Depression. And it was a very rough time for a lot of people. And what I like to say is that, Grant Wood's work, I'm going to back up here, is very optimistic. He's not painting a picture of the Depression. He is painting a picture of hard work, and how hard work and perseverance will see us through the Depression, that we will get to the other side of this. If we stick to it and work hard. It's a little nostalgic, kind of looking back, if you will, to a time when people did work the land by hand, but they got through all kinds of trials and tribulations, and we will too. We'll get through this. And the lighting itself, I think, is very optimistic. He's always been in love with light, even when he was an impressionist, which is really all about light. You can see here, very bright sunlight casting very sharp shadows on the landscape. It's a very bright future, as well as it had been sort of really set back as kind of a very bright past here. So, but again, using overalls, the father and the son in this case are both seen in bib overalls. From 1932, the next year, this is a drawing for a finished work. This is a drawing for Draft Horse. It's one of two drawings. The other drawing is for Racehorse, and the Racehorse has a jockey standing next to it. So he's really making a difference between the kinds of horses, which of course he would have been somewhat familiar with, having grown up as a child on a farm, but could easily see in any number of places. But here's a workhorse, a draft horse. This is a horse that works as opposed to a horse that races. And so the person who's tending this horse is on a farm, and the barn is behind him, and he's wearing overalls. He's wearing that ubiquitous farmer's outfit that you see. Here, boy milking a cow. This is a large oil on canvas. It really was a mural that was from one of the Epley hotels. A gift from Mr. Epley to Coe College, on view at Coe College. It's a large mural of a boy milking a cow, and you can see he is clad in his bib overalls. Also from that same series, Farmer with Pigs and Corn from 1932. Again, a mural. It's a large piece, 75 by 52 inches. And you see the farmer holding his bushel basket full of corn with a pig to either side. One of the sort of fun things to note in a lot of Grant Wood's images of farmers, you will see that they have a farmer's tan. They will oftentimes, their forehead will be pale, because they always wear a hat when they're working the farm, and so it doesn't get sun. And you can see he also has a tan line at his neck as well. And so he is very, very careful to note those details in the work. This is another work that is in the collection of Coe College. And then this is where his self-portrait fits. So he's doing this in 1932, representing, again, himself in bib overalls. But you only see the straps of which here, again, this is on view in our overalls exhibition. And it's interesting to look at it in comparison to a painting that he did. This is a painting in the collection of the Figge Art Museum. It's a self-portrait, and it's actually dated 1932/1941. And when he originally painted this self-portrait, it looked very much like the drawing in 1932. And then he went in again in 1941 and he painted out the bib overalls. He's at a very different place in his career at this point. By 1941, he is an instructor at the University of Iowa. He's a faculty member. And so he's changing his persona, if you will, by no longer representing himself in bib overalls, by painting over that and creating a regular open collar shirt. And that, he's really sort of redefining or thinking of himself in very, very different terms. He certainly was long since he, long associated with Iowa. The critics and so forth, when they talk about his work, oftentimes, talk about him being an artist in bib overalls. And so he, continued to wear them. They were still his working uniform, but he's at this point decided no longer to depict himself wearing them. Here from 34, Dinner for Threshers. Again, a farm scene. Again, note all of the pale foreheads of the farmers gathered around from a break from harvest. You can see people washing up outside. It's really kind of a cutaway house view. You see this very long dining room table, including the gentleman sitting in the center, which is on a more of a piano stool than a chair. The women in the kitchen bringing all of this food. People would frequently gather together to help each other bring in the crop. And then would be rewarded with a really remarkable meal. And then they would do this in turn for somebody else who is probably seated at the table. And so again, it was you can see everybody is wearing bib overalls. From 34, this is a study that he did for mural. Grant Wood is in charge of the Iowa WPA, doing murals all across the state, he and his team. And so he's overseeing this. This is a study that he did for a series of murals that were installed at the Iowa State University in Ames. This is a piece that is owned by the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art in Sunview in our Grant Wood Gallery. And again, it's about agricultural sciences. You see in the lower left, a gentleman, who has a needle. He's going to do some vaccination of probably those pigs. Then you see one has a rope around, kind of holding them in place so that he can be vaccinated. It is a study, so it's not finished. And so you see most of the faces have not been fully realized, but he is still very careful to make sure that their foreheads are paler compared to the rest of their face. Really remarkable murals that are still on view at Iowa State University. And here is the study again, bib overalls by almost everybody in this particular scene. Here, another drawing. You can see Grant Wood's drawings are extremely well finished. They're extremely highly realized. So here, a drawing plowing on Sunday at the Rhode Island School of Design Museum. And here he's taking a sip here to refresh himself. He still has his straps in his hand from the plow, but he's wearing his overalls. Spilt Milk from 1935. This is a work that Grant Wood created for book illustration. And again, this youngster who is still learning the ins and outs of milking kind of got the worst end of that bargain. But again, wearing his overalls. In the late 30s and until his death in 1942, Grant Wood created a series of lithographs, a series of prints for the Associated American Artists Group. This was a group active in the late 30s that commissioned artists to create work for their subscription service. This was a way of getting works of art into the hands of everyday people by subscription. For $5, you could subscribe and get a print by Grant Wood or Thomas Hart Benton or any number of other major artists who are part of the Associated American Artists. We call it AAA. And Grant Wood's prints were extremely popular and sold out frequently. And so we have a series of these on view in our overalls exhibition. Not all of them depict individuals in overalls, but I've shared with you some of these that have denim in them, whether they are just waist high or whether they are bib overalls. Here, Seed Time and Harvest from 1937. Here, Tree Planting Group, also from 1937. This is a work that is on view, as well as its drawing. And so the drawing is very large compared to the lithograph. And so, but it is wonderful to see these two works side by side. The drawing that you see here, again, very highly finished drawing. And I'm going to go back to the lithograph that you see here. Both of these images are actually in turn based on this painting. This is Arbor Day from 1932. It's a little bit earlier, but if you can, it's the same scene being played out in the foreground where they are basically planting a tree. It's a different angle, but it's basically the same scene. It is set sort of against a one-room schoolhouse that you see here, and all of the boys are wearing bib overalls. This was, just their everyday outfit. That they would wear to school, they would wear on the farm, what have you. Oh, and I forgot I had this detail here for you. And talk about your very sharp shadows here, your very strong, almost theatrical lighting. Another one of the lithographs from later, from 1939. This is in the spring, and really it's all about the farmer standing here in his overalls against this sweeping landscape. And here's the actual study for it, the drawing that's in the collection of the Butler Institute of American Art in Youngstown. And you can see how similar the drawing is to the actual lithograph, which he would have had to basically draw all over again on the stone. Approaching storm, also on view, and you can see that they're gathering up the crops here as the storm approaches. Again, wearing their bib overalls. Or here, wearing denim, probably bib overalls under the jacket, December afternoon from 1941, where they're hooking up the team to the sleigh. Here's Spring in Town, one of the last paintings that Grant Wood created from 1941. It's in the collection of the Swope Art Museum in Terre Haute. And you see someone in the foreground with a shovel, wearing denim pants with the big sort of rolled up cuff, which was quite popular at the time. And then here, Grant Wood's Spring in the Country, which is owned by the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art and is on view in the Grant Wood Gallery. Here you see a family, again, working the land by hand, and sort of nostalgic in that way. Again, the sense of light that sort of pervades it all. And I think I believe I have a detail in the foreground where this young man, this boy, the son presumably, is there with his mom. The father's in the background using a two-horse team to pull a plow, whose reins you can see are around his neck. And the boy here is putting all of these little seedlings in the ground in absolutely perfect rows. And he, is showing him wearing bib overalls, which is what his model was wearing. So here's Grant Wood drawing for Spring in the Country. And here's the model actually wearing bib overalls without a shirt, just like he is in the painting itself. And so he's got, and you just kind of have to move your mind's eye around to Grant Wood's point of view, and you'll see the young man in the correct orientation. So he's using actual models, which he frequently did, and he's clothing them in this case in bib overall, because that is what he's going to depict in his work. And that's the last slide that I have to share with you. I'm going to go ahead and stop my. And I know I've went very quickly through a great many works that Grant Wood created, but I really wanted to make it apparent the fact that Grant Wood depicted denim over and over and over in his career, and it was not just on the farmer class; it was on the factory worker as well. And he himself was intimately tied to denim, wore it as his own work uniform, as did other artists following his lead, and it really was part and parcel of Grant Wood's entire life and career. And so it's kind of fun in a way to take this somewhat different look at Grant Wood's life and career, really through the lens of this important and remains important fabric that has, not something that's just contained in the United States. It is a global phenomenon, and I believe I read somewhere that at any given moment, nearly half of the globe is wearing denim, and so it is one of those fabrics that really is ubiquitous in our current society. It was in Grant Wood's society, especially as a work uniform for all different lines of work, and it really was part and parcel of Grant Wood's life and his entire career. So if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to try and answer them. Just unmute yourself. Well, if there are no questions, I will let you go with the encouragement that you come down to the museum and take a look at these works in person. We don't have everything that I showed you here in the building, but we have a great many of those things. And we also have other temporary exhibitions up in which actually denim is seen. So it's interesting to come to see Grant Wood's depictions of denim as opposed to other artists who are depicting denim as well. So it's a great time to come down to the museum this summer. And if you need any further encouragement, this year we will be doing our 14th free summer initiative, where we will suspend admission for the entire months of July and August. So if your plans allow, come down multiple times really in July and August for no charge at all. And it's generously underwritten by a number of area businesses, and it allows us to open up our museum and all of the exhibitions that we have on view. We have 9 exhibitions on view right now. All of the exhibitions to everyone at no charge. So a great opportunity, a great time to come down to the museum. Wonderful opportunity to see Grant Wood's depictions of denim and so much more. So enjoy the rest of your day, and please join us again for the next installment of Grant Wood in Focus. Thank you very much.